When Suzanne's husband vanishes overseas with their savings, she braces for survival. But when his mother impersonates her to get him fired and sabotage a court order, Suzanne uncovers a sinister conspiracy stretching far beyond betrayal. With her son's future on the line, she must outmaneuver lies, fraud, and hidden offshore accounts before the man she once loved returns with nothing to lose. What began as abandonment becomes a legal war where the truth could save or destroy everything. She has left. I never imagined my world could shift so drastically with a single message. "Good luck paying rent," David had texted, and with that, a chapter of my life slammed shut. My hands trembled as I read those words again, the screen of my phone blurry from unshed tears. I stood frozen in the kitchen of our Chicago apartment, the same space where we once dreamed up our future over late-night coffee and Leo's toddler giggles. Now, silence filled the room, suffocating and absolute. David had left. Not just emotionally, not just spiritually, physically. He had taken the last of our joint savings and boarded a flight to Spain. It wasn't just abandonment, it was betrayal, calculated and cruel. Leo, our 4-year-old son, was asleep in his room, his stuffed dinosaur tucked under one arm, blissfully unaware that his father had vanished overnight. No warning, no goodbye. My first instinct was denial. Maybe there was an emergency. Maybe something had happened. But then I remembered the weeks of tension, the locked phone screens, the sudden business trips, and the colder touches. And the text. That awful, heartless text. It confirmed what I'd been trying to ignore. David was gone, and he had taken everything. Collapsed onto the couch, phone still in hand, and called the only person who could make sense of this chaos. Vivian, my attorney. She answered on the second ring, her voice warm and steady as always. Suzanne? He left. David left. He took the money, and he's gone. Silence. Okay, she said after a pause. We're going to get through this. First, we need to document everything. Do you still have access to the joint accounts? I opened my banking app. Balance, $17.32. No, I whispered. That's all right. We'll start there. I want you to send me any documentation you have. Statements, emails, texts, anything that shows financial activity or communication between you two. I'll start drafting an emergency motion. That night, after I tucked Leo into bed and whispered promises I wasn't sure I could keep, I sat down with my laptop and combed through every trace of our shared life. David had been moving money in small increments for months. A few hundred here, a few thousand there. Nothing noticeable unless you looked closely. I hadn't looked. I trusted him. I emailed Vivian a zip folder of documents and called it a night. But sleep never came. My mind looped through everything David had said in recent weeks. How he'd stopped making jokes about our anniversary. He barely noticed Leo's drawings on the fridge. How his mother, Beatrice, had grown increasingly involved, her suggestions laced with judgment. You should get a job, Suzanne. You can't expect David to carry everything. It was true I had stepped away from full-time editing to care for Leo during his early years. It was a choice David and I made together. But now, I was being punished for it. The next morning, I met Vivian at her office. She had already filed an emergency petition for temporary custody and a financial injunction. We're also requesting a forensic accountant, she said. If David has moved assets offshore, we need proof. He's in Spain, I told her. He said it was a business opportunity. She nodded, scribbling a note. Spain has mutual legal assistance treaties with the U.S. that could work in our favor. Back at home, the emptiness grew louder. Every room was a reminder of what used to be. But I didn't have time to fall apart. I updated my resume and reached out to a few publishing contacts. One offered a part-time editing position with remote flexibility. It wasn't much, but it was a start. 3 weeks passed. Then came the email from Meridian Global, the firm David had been consulting with before his disappearance. It was addressed to me. Dear Mrs. Mitchell, due to the concerning documentation received, we regret to inform you that we have terminated Mr. David Mitchell's consultancy contract effective immediately. Please be advised that any further legal action referenced in your correspondence should be directed through appropriate legal channels. Attached were scanned images of a letter, supposedly from me, accusing the company of harboring a fugitive and threatening legal action. It was filled with half-truths and outright lies. I hadn't sent that email. Panic gripped my chest as I read the message again. Attached were copies of documents David and I had compiled for our custody case, documents I had kept in a sealed envelope in my filing cabinet. Only one person had access to those, Beatrice. She had visited 2 weeks ago under the pretense of helping me cope. She had brought Leo a new toy, made passive-aggressive comments about my parenting, and lingered in the apartment while I napped. I remembered now, waking to find the cabinet slightly ajar, thinking nothing of it at the time. I called Vivian immediately. "This is identity fraud," she said, "and it's a clear attempt to manipulate the custody case." Vivian moved quickly. Within hours, she had filed motions documenting the fraud and requesting the court investigate potential obstruction of justice. We also contacted the police to report the identity theft. A detective was assigned to our case. But the most shocking revelation came when David called me for the first time since he left. "You vindictive," he snarled, not bothering with pleasantries. "You got me fired after everything I offered you." "It wasn't me," I said, my voice cold. "It was your mother." He went silent. "That's absurd," he finally said. "Why would she do that?" "To make you look financially unstable, to sabotage the custody ruling, to turn you against me." Another silence. "Mom would never check your emails. Look at the documents that were sent. They were in my apartment until your mother visited." More silence. Then a curt, "I'll call you back." 10 minutes later, my inbox pinged. An email from David. Attached were screenshots of text messages between him and Beatrice. 3 months earlier, she had written, "Once you're established in Spain, we can work on getting full custody of Leo. With Suzanne's depression after his birth, we can argue she's unstable." I stared at the screen, my heart pounding. My postpartum depression, a battle I had fought through with therapy and the illusion of David's support, had been weaponized. This wasn't just abandonment, it was a conspiracy. I forwarded the text to Vivian, who called me immediately. "This changes everything. I'm filing emergency motions right now. This goes beyond custody. It's about criminal conspiracy." We were gaining ground, but we needed more. Something undeniable. Something that would freeze David's assets and compel him to return to the US. That's when I thought of Trevor. David's old business associate, Trevor, had always been more friend than colleague. He hadn't contacted me since David left, but I suspected he knew more than he let on. I called him. "I need your help," I said. Trevor sighed. "I figured this call would come. What do you need?" "Information." "David must have told you something about where he moved the money." There was a long pause. "He mentioned the Cayman Islands. His mom helped him set it up for tax reasons. The account name was something generic. First Caribbean International, I think?" My mind raced. "If we could tie that account to our marital funds, we'd have a solid case." I remembered David's obsession with using variations of Leo's birthday and our anniversary as passwords. Hands shaking, I accessed his cloud storage and tried the most likely combination. It worked. Inside, I found folders labeled Spain Move, Custody Strategy, and Accounts. There were screenshots of transfer confirmations, email correspondence with Beatrice, and a document titled Custody Plan, detailing how they would paint me as unstable. I sent everything to Vivian. She called back, her voice sharp with purpose. "This is it. We're filing emergency orders, freezing the Cayman account, requesting international enforcement." 2 days later, the judge granted our motion. David's lawyer filed a counter motion, accusing me of illegal hacking. For a moment, it threatened to derail our progress. But then, Jackie called, David's new girlfriend, the one he'd moved to Spain with. "Suzanne, we need to talk," she said, her voice shaky. "David's falling apart. He's talking about flying back to Chicago to fix things with you. I'm scared. He's not the man I thought he was." Her voice broke. "He has another account, in Liechtenstein. He said his mom doesn't even know about it. This was crucial." But I knew Jackie wasn't calling out of kindness. "What do you want, Jackie?" "Protection." When David finds out I told you, he'll come after me too. I want immunity. I called Vivian. We offer her immunity in exchange for documentation and a sworn statement, she said. Jackie agreed immediately. The documents showed $200,000 in a Liechtenstein account. It was the final puzzle piece. Vivian moved swiftly. We filed for a restraining order. And as David boarded a plane for Chicago, airport security was waiting. His return marked the beginning of a courtroom showdown that would expose everything. But as I sat in the gallery, waiting for the gavel to fall, I realized something. I was no longer the woman he had underestimated. I was Suzanne, and I was ready to fight. I sat in silence, the walls of Vivian's office closing in, as she held up the printed email. This, she said, tapping the document with a manicured finger, is supposedly from you. It paints David as a threat to Meridian Global, filled with half-truths and veiled legal threats. It also includes confidential documents, Suzanne. My breath hitched. I never sent that. I swear. Vivian didn't look surprised. Then we have a case of identity fraud on our hands. My heart pounded. That visit, when Beatrice came over to comfort me after David left, she had been in my apartment, unattended, while I was in the shower. I hadn't thought twice about it, but now I remembered her asking about my legal documents, my files, offering to tidy up while I rested. She must have taken copies of my records, I murmured. That's the only explanation. Vivian nodded. We'll need to file an additional motion immediately. This email not only affected David's employment, it violated your rights and interfered with a standing court order. That night, my phone lit up with an incoming call. David, you vindictive bitch, he snarled the moment I answered. You got me fired, after everything I did for you. His fury was so immediate, so blind that I could barely get a word in. But then I said the one thing that stopped him cold. It wasn't me. It was your mother. There was a pause, long, heavy. That's absurd, he muttered. She'd never... Check your email, David. Look at the documents sent to HR. Those were in my apartment. The only person who had access was your mother. She visited last week, remember? Silence. Then, I'll call you back. 10 minutes later, an email from David landed in my inbox. Attached were screenshots, text messages between him and Beatrice, some from months earlier. One line jumped out. Once you're established in Spain, we can work on getting full custody of Leo. With Suzanne's history of depression after his birth, we can make a case that she's unstable. My knees gave out. I sat on the floor clutching my phone. My postpartum depression, something I had fought through with therapy with David's supposed support, was being used as a weapon against me. By both of them. This wasn't about David running away. This was about erasing me. Vivian was livid. We'll file an emergency motion citing these texts as evidence of a custody conspiracy and identity theft. We also filed a police report. A record had to exist, officially, tying Beatrice to this fraud. But I knew we needed more. The texts were compelling, but we needed undeniable, traceable proof that David had hidden assets, money moved illegally, or without court approval. So I called Trevor. His voice was cautious. Suzanne, I'm not angry, I just need your help for Leo. That got his attention. Guilt softened his voice. What do you want to know? Where's the money, Trevor? David didn't just leave without a plan. He must have mentioned something. He hesitated. Then, he said something about the Caymans, an old account that his mother set up for tax purposes. First Caribbean International, I think. Anything else? A password? Documents? He always used Leo's birth date for everything. Sometimes with your anniversary. I'm sorry, Suzanne. I didn't know it would go this far. I ended the call and went straight to David's cloud storage. He'd left his laptop behind in his rush, and I knew his go-to password combinations. Trembling, I entered the date of our wedding, merged with Leo's birthday. It worked. Folders opened like a treasure chest of betrayal. Screenshots of financial transfers. Communication with offshore banks. A PDF labeled custody strategy. Emails. Between him and Beatrice discussing the timeline to isolate me legally and mentally, I forwarded everything to Vivian. An hour later, she called. "This is it. I'm filing emergency motions now. We're going after the offshore accounts, requesting a freeze and notifying international enforcement." 2 days later, we won a partial victory. The court froze the Cayman Islands account pending investigation, but David's lawyer fired back, accusing me of illegal hacking. The court hesitated, requesting clarification. Vivian pushed forward, arguing that marital property laws permitted me to access shared financial data. Then came the call I didn't expect. "Jackie." Her voice was hollow. "Suzanne, we need to talk. David's falling apart here." "That's not my concern anymore." "Please," she insisted. "He's talking about flying back to fix things with you. I'm scared." "Why are you telling me this?" "Because he's different. He's obsessed. And he's hiding money from me too." That got my attention. "Go on." "He has another account. Not even his mom knows about it. After the Cayman one got frozen, he told me not to worry. He had backup. I found a statement. It's in Liechtenstein." My pulse raced. This could be the missing link. "Why are you telling me this, Jackie? What do you want?" She didn't hesitate. "Immunity. When he finds out I've talked to you, I'm done. I need protection." Vivian and I discussed it. We drafted a proposal. Full immunity in exchange for every document, account number, and a sworn statement implicating David and Beatrice. Jackie signed within the hour. What she gave us was a goldmine. A Liechtenstein account with over $200,000 in it, our marital funds. That same night, Vivian filed for an emergency restraining order. When David's plane landed at O'Hare, airport security was waiting. He called me from the detention room, his voice taut with rage. "What the hell is this? I came back to fix things." "With a one-way ticket? No hotel reservation?" "You were planning to confront me, David, not reconcile." He didn't respond, only hung up. The emergency hearing was the next morning. David showed up unshaven and agitated, his attorney barely prepped. Vivian laid it all out: text messages, offshore accounts, identity fraud, custody conspiracy. Then came Jackie's testimony. The judge's expression darkened with every word. When Vivian presented the custody strategy PDF, the courtroom fell into stunned silence. "Your Honor," Vivian concluded, "we ask for full custody, supervised visitation, a forensic audit of all assets, and criminal referrals for both Mr. Mitchell and Ms. Beatrice." David's lawyer tried to spin it, that David was protecting his finances from an emotionally unstable ex. The judge interrupted. "Counsel, I've seen enough. Your client has committed fraud, abandoned his child, and interfered with court orders." The ruling was swift, all accounts frozen under court control. David's passport was confiscated, temporary full custody to me, referral to the district attorney for possible charges. David didn't look at me as the court adjourned, but I looked at him calmly. No longer the desperate woman he expected to find. His escape plan had become his prison. The courtroom felt eerily still after the gavel fell. As David was escorted out, his glare met mine one last time. A mix of disbelief, fury, and defeat. I held Leo's small hand tighter. It wasn't fear that gripped me anymore, but clarity. We had faced the fire and walked through it scarred, but not broken. Over the next few weeks, the fallout from the court's ruling unraveled like a slow, dramatic script. The forensic accounting team continued to dig deeper into David and Beatrice's financial web. What started as hidden marital assets quickly expanded into a broader picture of tax evasion and international transfers tied to fraudulent declarations. The district attorney's office launched a full-scale criminal investigation. For the first time in years, I felt safe. There were no new threats, no late-night panic attacks, and no unexpected legal notices. My attorney, Vivian, remained vigilant. She ensured every ruling was enforced to the letter. David's passport remained confiscated, the frozen accounts were brought under court oversight, and the restraining order was extended pending the criminal case. David's industry contacts, once a source of pride for him, began distancing themselves as the public record of his actions circulated. His LinkedIn profile disappeared. Recruiters stopped calling. When a legal blogger published a deep dive into the case, it went viral. From executive to exile, the custody conspiracy that shook Meridian Global. Meanwhile, I slowly began rebuilding my life. I accepted a full-time position with the publishing house I freelanced for, this time as a senior editor. They provided a flexible schedule to accommodate Leo's preschool hours. It was the first time in a long while that I felt professionally valued and emotionally balanced. Leo began to thrive. The small condo we moved into glowed with color and comfort. Dinosaur decals, soft blankets, shelves full of bedtime books. Every corner was ours. No echoes of arguments or the cold detachment that had crept into our old home remained. This space was sacred. Jackie returned to Spain shortly after testifying. Our last conversation was brief. "He scared me," she admitted, "but I thought I could change him." "You can't fix a man who doesn't think he's broken," I replied. She nodded, eyes downcast. "Good luck, Suzanne, and thank you for not pressing charges against me. You gave me the last piece I needed for Leo. That mattered more." Her immunity agreement held. But I suspected she would live with the weight of her choices for years. Vivian and I met in person for the first time in months. Her tone was less businesslike and more like a friend by now. "You're free now, Suzanne. Not just legally. Emotionally, too. It shows." "I never wanted this war," I said, "but I'm glad I survived it." We hugged. It was brief, but powerful. Weeks turned into months. I filed the final paperwork to complete the divorce settlement. The terms, as expected, remained heavily in my favor. Complete restoration of marital assets, full custody of Leo, supervised visitation rights for David, which he never exercised, and indexed child support that adjusted with David's potential future earnings. He remained unemployed. The district attorney's charges moved slowly but surely. Beatrice was indicted for identity fraud, conspiracy to interfere with custody proceedings, and obstruction. She pleaded not guilty and tried to mount a defense of family protection, but the evidence was overwhelming. Her social circle, once filled with charity galas and tennis luncheons, turned cold. Her once pristine image was in shambles. The woman who had judged me for being less than ideal was now whispered about in every country club hallway. As for David, the criminal charges took longer to finalize, but the civil consequences weighed heavily. He could no longer leave the country, access most of his savings, or gain meaningful employment with his reputation in tatters. The financial penalties began stacking up. With no support from his mother, who was fighting her own battle, he tried to appeal the custody order. The judge refused to entertain it. By the 1-year mark of his departure, David had become a shadow. He sent Leo a birthday card. No return address, no call, no effort to visit. "Will Daddy come to my school play?" Leo asked. I knelt beside him, adjusting his costume. "No, sweetheart, but I'll be there. Always." His face lit up. That was enough for him. One afternoon, as I prepared dinner, Leo sat at the table drawing. "Is Daddy bad?" he asked suddenly. My heart stung. "Daddy made some very wrong choices," I said carefully, "but you're not responsible for any of them." "He made you cry." I remember. I nodded. "Yes, he did. But we're okay now, right?" He smiled. "We're awesome." I blinked back tears and kissed his forehead. The resilience in his young heart inspired me daily. As summer approached, Vivian called with an update. The last of the offshore accounts had been seized. All funds returned. The judge signed off on the final restitution order. "You're officially done, Suzanne. The legal chapter is closed." I took Leo to the beach that weekend. Watching him run across the sand, his laughter mixing with the ocean breeze, I felt something profound. Peace. Not the absence of conflict, but the presence of wholeness. I wrote again. The story poured out of me. A memoir titled The Custody Strategy: How I Fought Back. My editor encouraged a publication date early next year. She believed it would help women across the globe facing invisible wars, and that parting text from David, the one meant to crush me, I framed it. "Good luck paying rent." It now hung beside my desk, not as a reminder of bitterness, but as a testament to how far I had come. From betrayal to battle, from survival to sovereignty. This was our story, mine and Leo's. Not of what we lost, but of everything we reclaimed.